What up? This is David, and today I'm in Seoul, South Korea. I'm in Jamsil at Sokchon Lake. I love the lake behind me. I love coming out to this place pretty often because it's such a great place that's a combination of like nature and city. So today what I wanted to talk to you about is the idea of raising your standards, raising your default, but also about how the environment helps to shape your defaults and helps to shape your standards. And I want to pinpoint an idea called hotbeds, this idea of hotbeds around the world. And I got this idea from a book called The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. And that book, amazing book by the way, and it talks about like how we can build skill, right? Build talent in a sense. And I had a big light bulb moment while reading that book, not only because of learning how to build skill, of course, but the other thing that I got a big like epiphany moment for was the idea of hotbeds. And what hotbeds are, it's like sections of the world where world-class talent arises from. And these skills are very specific to that location, and these are very specific skills. So for example, like Brazil, what is Brazil known for in terms of sports, right? Brazil is known for their soccer. And Brazil is considered to be like a hotbed for soccer, or like in European words, football, right? And there's many reasons for this, but then one of the reasons is because many people in Brazil, they think that soccer is just like an everyday kind of thing. So in a sense, their standards have been raised because of the environment that they grew up on. And so that's just one example, but I can give you like plenty other examples. So another example I can give you is like the LPGA, ladies golf, right? Ladies pro golf. And in fact, South Korea is actually one of the main hotbeds for LPGA. And I remember giving this like talk many years ago, and during that time, I forgot when, it was like 2020 or something. During that time, I looked at the leaderboard of LPGA, and I think like South Korean players occupy like 7 spaces of the top 10 players in the world. So it's something crazy, right? And another one is like tennis, how like a small location in Russia produces all these great tennis players. Or how like a music studio in like Nashville, Tennessee produces all these like great singers. And so there's like these hotbeds all around the world. Another one recently that I thought of is gaming, how like South Korea produces all these like great gamers in like the esports world. And so the question is, why does that happen? Why does that happen? And it has to do with, a lot of it has to do, not all of it, but a lot of it has to do with environment. How the environment raises our standards, thereby raising our skill, raising our default into what we find is normal. All right, what we find is normal, and the skill around what is normal. So to give you an easy example of this is, so whenever I go to the gym in Korea, it's very different from when I go to the gym in the States. When I go to the gym in Korea, like a typical bench press, like a typical person will like bench like 100 pounds, right? And that's like, because that's like the normal default mode in Korean gyms. It's like you bench 100 pounds. But then when I go to the States, like there's a different normal. Their standards are way higher. Like people would be benching 200, 300 pounds. And because you're like in that environment so many times, you just absorb that information. You just absorb it both subliminally and consciously. And then what happens is like your defaults get set at that level. It's like, oh yeah, you should be benching 300 pounds. 300 pounds should be the normal thing that people do. And that kind of becomes like this global belief that you have. Whereas when I go to Korea, when I go to the gym in Korea, people around there would absorb the mindset of like, oh yeah, the default should be about 100 pounds. And so they have a different mindset on things. They have a completely different standard. So one easy way to raise your standards and to develop better skill is to surround yourself in an environment that has those high defaults, where these high level of standards becomes the normal thing. Like if I'm a lady and I want to get into pro golf, I would get myself to South Korea, because when I'm around that environment, I just get better by default, because their default is like so much higher than the rest of the world. When I want to get better at football, I would go to Argentina or Brazil, because they just have like a different level of standards over there. And so these hotbeds are like all over the world, and I know I'm naming a few examples, but there's like countless examples of this stuff. And not only that, but then your peer group is helps to raise your standards as well. So like to give you an example, this is like a Tony Robbins thing, but then he says like proximity is power, right? Proximity is power. Who you surround yourself with most is who you become. So let's take the example of like the military. The military versus like your home environment. When somebody goes into the military, they have a different level of standard, right? When somebody goes to train with the Navy SEALs, they have a different level of standards. Not only because of the high defaults and high standards, but because of the peers that they're surrounded with. But then when you go back, when that same like soldier goes back home and into like a, I don't know, like a normal work environment, their level of standards drop drastically, because they're not surrounded by those peers anymore. So like that, you know, that saying where like you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with most, well, that holds so true in terms of skill and mindset. That's why you want to like surround yourself with people who just raise your standards, that just has like a different mindset of like defaults. They have a higher default than the rest of the world. And then it becomes like of course. It becomes like an of course thing. Like, of course you should bench 300 pounds. Like, of course you should, I don't know, make like 3 goals in a single game in like a football match, a soccer match, whatever. So in order to build better skill, seek out somewhere where people are just really good, to be honest, where it becomes a common sense to have like those high standards. So that's all I have for this video. And if you want to learn more about this, like read the book Talent Code, Daniel Coyle, amazing book. Shows you how to build skill. And also I would also look up K. Anders Ericsson. He's the founder of the 10,000 hour rule. And but that number is actually a misconception. It's like 10,000 hours not only is the minimum that you have to have, but it's also about 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. There's a difference between deliberate practice and regular practice. And I'll talk about that in another video. But that's all I had for this video. Hope you found some value out of this one, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.